the streaming software. We will be live momentarily. According to Restream, we're not online yet. Hello. There it is. Ladies and gentlemen, one thing is live. Let's wait for the next thing to be live. We are live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Hop Pole Position podcast. For anybody who's not seen this before, this is every Thursday, 8 p.m. We have a live video podcast where we talk about music tech, guitar news, all sorts of audio nerdery. And I am your host, Adam Steele, and joining me as always is Mr. Liam Wright. How are you, sir?
I'm fuzzy.
Fuzzy? You are a little fuzzy. Hopefully that will sort itself out. That seems to be getting worse by the second, so
Yeah,
hopefully it's just...
on my end as well.
Yeah, weird. Okay.
I can see you fine.
Hopefully it's just a bitrate thing that will sort itself. Here's hoping.
Yeah, I'm good. Tired, but good.
Yeah, good stuff.
I've got to stay up almost all night sorting out a website that needs to be done while it's not peak time. So
Oh.
fun.
Joy.
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. I'm very well, actually. I've had so much going on with the channel this last week. It's been an absolute blur. And yes, before we get into talking about us, let's just say that this is the Music Tech Podcast of the week, and let's roll the intro. And yes, as the intro said, this is brought to you by you through Patreon. Your support really helps us, and we really, really appreciate it. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had a big surge in support on Patreon, which has been amazing and really is helping us to build this. And we have our eternal gratitude to give to you. Tonight, I am opening up a kind of Beavertown neck oil. So feel free, if you are of legal drinking age, to drink along with the stream. Make sure you drink responsibly, of course.
Indeed.
Oh, that's good.
Sensible drinking.
Yes, thank you. And that's made me lose my train of thought now. So we were talking about how we were, and yes, so the channel has been mega busy. I was chatting to Glenn Fricker just before we went live. Literally just a quick chat. That's my life now. It's weird. I love it.
Name drop.
Yeah, clang. Did I drop a name? But I just thought it was, people who just, it's. I'm not tired of stuff like that yet. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, last weekend where me and Adam saw each other in person.
Oh,
For
yeah.
the first time in like 2 months.
Dangerous.
Socially distanced away from each other, but obviously the whole thing of if you can't work from home, if you need to go to work, go to work. Well, I've needed to go to work for a day to do some stuff. So we went down, had a quick meeting across the studio. I pulled a chair up and we were a good 10 feet away. But yeah, I was telling him then, I was like, it's crazy because I do remember right at the very, very beginning of him starting the channel, him showing me, and we were talking about what he wanted to do, showing videos of Glenn and be like, see this guy, I watch this guy all the time and he does this sort of stuff, and I think he does really good content, and I think I could do something on my own, but he's one of my favorite people, and I want to make YouTube, and now you're like, yeah, he's my mate now.
It is really bizarre. I mean, I think it's absolutely brilliant. But that was always kind of the aim, is do what we do, try not to, be somebody else, keep going, work hard, and eventually it'll pay off, and it seems to be getting there. And yeah, so I did see Liam over the weekend, but on the same day I spent about 7 hours, without exaggeration, on different Skype calls to different people around the world. A lot of stuff is happening. I was trying to film a video that day, and I turned up at the studio, I think 10:30 in the morning. I didn't leave till about midnight, and I got one video filmed.
Yeah.
It was an incredibly productive day.
You're like, I'm doing some filming.
Yes, so that was the intention. Was I came into the studio to do loads of filming, did one video and set in motion a lot of other things. No, tell a lie, I did 2 videos because one of them was the live stream that ended up on the Spectre Sound Studios channel live at that time. We were talking about the Reaper course, which of course, shameless plug, the Ultimate Reaper Guide is now on sale through Pro Mix Academy, which is affiliated with Produce Like a Pro. I believe Warren Hewitt is actually live right now doing a mix, which has been going on since an hour ago. So yeah, there is that going on as well. But this is our 8 p.m. slot. This is what we do every week. So here we are.
This is our slot, Warren.
Yeah.
God. No, but definitely check Warren's channel out. The guy's a legend.
Yeah, he is absolutely brilliant. And it's good to see everybody in chat. It's good to see you all joining us for this stream. As people have been joining us a lot over the last few days. Yesterday I did a mastering stream. The day before I did a mix stream. We've been doing a lot of live streaming recently. This poor computer of mine's been taking an absolute battering. It's great.
I know, right?
Yeah. I got this nice thin laptop at the start of the year thinking, new year, my old one was 4 years old. I didn't spend the most money possible because I thought, what, this'll be great for quite a while. I'm already running the thing right up to its absolute limits. Because I'm doing like full album mixes at the same time as live streaming, and I was foreseeing doing that once in a blue moon, and now it's becoming kind of weekly.
The regular.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to look at alternative options of maybe having a streaming computer and then doing some, I don't know. I'll work that out.
Yeah, no. Yeah. You got an Elgato, haven't you?
I do. It's one of the older ones that's got a 2-second delay on it, though.
Right.
But I'll sort that out because
Is that a problem?
Maybe not if I can make sure everything has the same amount of delay. If I can sync everything up, then as far as anyone on the outside world's concerned, it's fine. So yeah, we'll see.
Marty. I see Marty. I've only just managed to load up the chat. Lots of new faces. Hello, everybody.
Yes, hello to everybody who's been joining us over the last couple of weeks. Since we went on the Produce Like a Pro channel and Spectre Media channel, which has been the highlights really of the last couple of weeks for me, but on a personal level, the channel has grown quite rapidly, and you are all welcome. Hello, everybody. Make yourselves at home. Come in.
The Council of Daves has arrived.
The Council of Daves, all rise. It's a long-running joke for any new people that a lot of our long-term, hardcore, regular viewers all seem to be called David for some reason. Marty wasn't called David, so Marty became his own thing.
Marty became Marty.
Yes, quite. And so, yeah, as well as a lot of these Skype calls that we were doing over the weekend, there were some things that have been set in motion that I am not allowed to talk about yet. Those kind of things that make me really excited. So...
Hushed tones.
Yes, hushed tones very loudly. There's stuff coming up very soon. I'll be back in the studio on Saturday doing things. Lots and lots of things to do, which is exciting.
Ooh.
Yes. And I've just been commissioned to mix another 12 songs for a band called Banana Ranch, 2 of which I already have the files for, so probably next week I'm going to begin mixing those on stream. And those are going to be like the one that we did on Tuesday, which was a mix of a rock song with mandolin, where I hadn't heard that song at all.
All right.
It's Justin from Two Notes in chat. Hi, Justin. Welcome.
Hello.
You tuned in almost just in time for our headline news article. And before you do, yes, let's talk about Discord. We're using Discord right now. Liam, or Marty, would you be so good as to drop the link to Discord in the chat, please?
I've already dropped it 4 times.
Well, hey, indeed you have. Oh, I can only see it the once. Maybe that's restream filtering. I don't know. That could just
Maybe.
could be a filter on my side. Don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really did enjoy the session on Tuesday where we mixed a kind of mandolin but prog rock female vocal kind of track. That was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not exactly the same band members that we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks, but it is the same drummer who also has become a very good kind of recording engineer. So he is coordinating the whole thing and trying to get levels right, tracks named properly, which helps me out massively. And that's why I didn't spend an entire age. And hi to Benedict from Two Notes as well. So it seems like the entire Two Notes crowd is gathering on us, so we should probably start talking about the news.
The news.
Play the sample.
Oh, sorry.
For the news.
The news.
The news. So, news article number 1 for today is the big one, the Two Notes torpedo captor. We managed to play with this a little bit at NAMM, and that was a lot of fun, but of course it wasn't publicly available. And due to the entire COVID situation, all that kind of thing, this was one of those products that was almost due to ship, and then shipping became hell. But now they are here. They're out. I'm hoping to get my hands on one pretty soon so I can do a real in-depth demo. You know what I'm like. I'll be doing absolutely everything. But I have been playing with the Two Notes Cab M, which is basically half of this box, almost. So, I'll just reach down here. I have, underneath, I have the Torpedo Captor, which is the original model, the Captor 8 ohm version. This is a load box, so I can run a 100-watt amp and absolutely have it screaming, which is great. I've been using this on stream a lot to do reamping, but this doesn't have the virtual cabinet emulation, which typically is the bit that Two Notes are famous for. It's what they do. And so the Cab M is kind of like the other half of this. I don't have it to hand. I've left it at the studio, typically. I will be back, like I said, at the studio in a couple of days and cracking on with that. And the Captor X is pretty much all of that squashed into a single box, but with a couple of extra cool new features. Like the stereo space thing, and there's this twin tracker that makes it sound like double guitars, which will make this really useful for live sound. So you load up your Two Notes cabinets, of which we make several, like all the Zillas, like the tall beast and the big beast, shameless plug. And so there are a few controls that are actually set as knobs on the front as well, which means that if you're using this in a live situation, you don't need to be getting out your Bluetooth control, your iPad and everything in the middle of a show. If it needs to be changed, you can just reach over. And so these are now available. They've landed at most of the stores around the world, which, apparently shipping's been an absolute nightmare. And the headline is, will this kill the Aux? The Aux being the offering from Universal Audio. We've talked on stream several times about my thoughts on Universal Audio, but most of it's to do with their digital system. The Aux is a different thing. But the Aux does a similar thing to this, but it's about 2 or 3 times the size and about 2+ times the price. And that's going to be the killer, I think. That this thing is small enough to sit on top of one side of an amp, like you can see here.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Yeah, which makes it much easier to take around with you. I mean, it's exactly the same size as this one that I have here, which is, not that big compared to the size. I have a relatively average-sized head, so just to give you an idea. It's like the old meme of banana for scale. I don't have a banana to hand, but I have my head. And instead of a cab, or actually with a cabinet, you can route it through this, and it can do lots of volume attenuation. So you can have a little bit of volume coming out of your amp on stage, but you're not going to have the sound guy screaming, "Turn it down!" Or at least if you are, you can reach around the back and you can switch this little switch. And it can go from full volume and just pass the virtual cabinets through to the sound guy, for which they will thank you eternally because there are no microphones to knock and move. Or you can, yeah, that's a big deal, especially on a smaller stage. Things on a smaller stage, you definitely will want to be turning your cabinet down, but you'll probably want to run your amp relatively loud to get that tone, man. You know, that we like loud guitar amps. There is some science behind that. But this little switch here means that you can turn it down and then down again. So you can actually use this in your bedroom as well. I mean, there's so much attenuation available here that you can run. At NAMM, I think we had a Marshall Plexi with the volume on something like 7 or 8, which for a Plexi it is enough to deafen a person. And that's not hyperbole. They go genuinely that loud. And we had the switch on the back of this doing full attenuation, and we could talk over it. And that's huge. Or if that's too quiet for you on stage, of course, you just dial it back one. Very, very clever. And of course,
it was very cool.
Yeah, very cool indeed.
This is when you were using this when you were doing the solos for the track, weren't you?
That's right. So the track that we recorded at NAMM, which actually is due for release, hopefully on Sunday, finally, because I've now got all the guest solos in, which, again, because of the whole situation that's happened around the world, that's taken longer than we expected. But now I have everything to put together. And so, this was the load box that we used at NAMM to record the solos with. And the rhythm guitars, we used the G20 from Rev, which has inbuilt 2 notes, lovely load box, and a lot of these features. But, of course, most amps that are not a Rev D20 and a G20 don't have that inbuilt, which is where one of these comes in. And so the price, we're looking at $550 or £470, which sounds like a lot, but the Captor was something like £250, £300. But then the Cab M is about the same again, so you add them together, that makes logical sense because it's a lot of clever technology packed into one little box. And honestly, if you've got like a vintage amp that you love using, you know how to use it, you know how to get the best out of it, but you want to crank it, and you know, you can't for home reasons or even stage reasons these days, because you know, the way that modern stages work, it's not like the 70s where you were supposed to bring 2 full stacks of amps and crank them and point them at the crowd. Now that's very much considered a no-no, but you probably still want the sound of that amp that you've got. You know, I've got a PV5150 underneath the desk here, which was the Eddie Van Halen signature amp. And I think he ran 2 of those live, and that was enough for Eddie Van Halen. But that sound, it's the sound. So, using one of these, that's the thing you can do. And of course, if you get one of these, you can then go out and buy it.
I think it's really clever how they're able to do this sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's very, very clever indeed. It must have taken them that extra amount of time and effort to get all the modelling stuff into the same box as the load box, because, I mean, that must be why they came out with the Captor, the black Captor, which shall we call it, first. Yeah. So the Torpedo Captor X, a few people have been asking on forums about impedance, because the original Captor came in 4, 8 or 16 ohm variants, depending on what your amp was capable of. I went with the 8 because most guitar amps can do 8 ohms. Generally, it's on some kind of a switch. Some smaller amps can only do 16. I think the only amp I can think of that only does 4 is an Ampeg SVT, you know, the big bass amp. But that's a 300 watt amp. You can't use one of them with one of these anyway. It will go bang. Because that's such a big, scary, big amp. That's way too much. You can't do that. But this Torpedo Captor X is 8 ohm only. But I've heard rumours on the wind that there is going to be a 16 ohm version coming out for those people who need that. And one of the reasons it's so it's a single impedance unit, because I would imagine that keeps down the costs. 2 Notes also make a load box called the Torpedo Reload, which can do 4, 8 and 16, but that costs a lot more. That's their absolute, like, for a load box, that's their absolute Mac Daddy top level offering. but the price reflects that, and not everybody's going to want to invest that kind of money where we're talking 4 figures. Box.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a different area.
Is indeed. And if you're a person who has specific impulse responses, IRs, which a lot of guitarists have used IR files and want to use those, you can load those straight into the Captor X and go that route as well. So if you've decided, like, you're a fan of, I don't know, Own Hammer, for example's impulse responses, and that's your sound, that's your jam, you can just load those into this box, and off you go. So very, very clever indeed.
Yeah. It's a lot of stuff in a little box.
It's a lot of stuff in a little box. And I'm hoping to get one of these boxes.
Kind of sums up two note stuff, though, isn't it? It's
a lot of stuff in a little box. Yeah, absolutely. And one extra thing that I must mention is they keep adding features. They're not one of these companies where once it's out, that's it, it's done. If they can get new features in there, they will. The old torpedo cab used to be a unit where you could have one microphone on a speaker because of the way the system was limited, and they somehow managed to upgrade it so you could actually have 2 completely different microphones on there and blend them together, which at the time they thought you literally couldn't do that with that box, so they somehow found a way. The newer one, the Cab M, they're doing an entire update right now, which is what I was talking about before. That it's still in beta, but it's a massive upgrade where everything's being improved. There's now a preamp in there in the Cab M, which wasn't there before. The power amp.
How do you do that? How do you do that?
Magic is how you do that.
How do you just create a preamp?
They are clever. They are very clever. It's a digital preamp, I believe, but it sounds right. It's modelled on a Fender Bassman, so a very clean, slightly driven thing. So the idea there is with the Cab M, if you put a couple of like drive pedals on, like a DS1 or maybe a Klon kind of thing, like a One Platumnus or something, then it sounds like it should, and you can go completely ampless on a rig if that's what you want to do. Very clever. But yeah, there's
Make
now.
Sure you wear sun cream if you do. Make sure you wear sun cream if you go ampless.
Yes. Quite. But yeah, they're adding in all these new features that weren't there before, and so I would put money on it that the Captor X will have all these features inbuilt very soon, if it doesn't have some of these features already. So. Yeah, they're that kind of company where if they can fit new, extra, better stuff in there, they will. And they won't just drop support for stuff. Because that's something that really annoys me about some companies, is they release a product, and then 2 months later, if there's not been any major, crashing bugs that are making people send it back and get their money back, that's it, it's done. Support's dropped. It's like, move on. Now we're selling the version 2. It's like, yeah, those are the kind of companies.
Good guys as well. We hung out with them a bit in NAMM, didn't we?
We did.
Made some funny videos.
Yes, and there's good people, and it's always good to not just work with great people, but to buy products off good people, because good people look after you. That's just common sense, really. So let's move on.
Sweet.
We don't want to dwell on this news topic forever.
We always do.
We do. Valhalla. So I've had quite a few questions in chat while I've been mixing over the last few weeks, asking me about Valhalla. So Valhalla are a company that make DSP-based reverbs and delays. And I tried them a while back, and they weren't bad. They were quite good, but they just didn't do what I wanted them to do, which is completely fair and entirely subjective. I could see why people use them, but just wasn't my thing. But they make now this reverb called Supermassive, and it's free. And it's apparently one of those... Free, you say? Free.
Free?
Completely free.
I like free.
We all like free. So it uses feedback delay networks to create super lush, otherworldly reverbs. I might actually get that because that sounds like an important tool to have in the box. Yes.
And it's free.
And it's free. Dan Barr in chat saying the Torpedo Captor X is 800 Canadian dollars in Canada. Yeah, but that's Canadian rubles. You know, if it already costs $550 in US, I mean, it should cost about $2,500 in Canadian money, so you're actually getting a bit of a bargain there. I'm exaggerating, of course. But yeah, that's unfortunately to a large part. I think that's just currency for you.
Yeah, I don't know what the exchange rate is, so I can't comment.
Canadian dollar is worth a lot less, unfortunately. That much I'm aware of. I'm not sure of the exact exchange rate right now, but yeah. Also, whenever we say a US price, that doesn't include things like sales tax. I know sometimes that doesn't in Canada as well, but it's almost a given that US stuff, you're going to add state taxes and things on top of that. Yeah, 70 cents on the dollar for Canadian, so that sounds about right. Yeah, works out. So yes, apparently feedback delay networks means that supermassive is going to be huge. It's got 8 different modes, whatever those modes are. Like there's Gemini mode and some others, and it's free, so go and get it from Valhalla's page while you can. I'm probably going to do that after the stream tonight. And then from one free plugin to one that's very definitely not a free plugin, from our friends at Arturia. I'm really excited about this. I found out about this today. The OB-Xa V from Arturia, because Arturia do some of the best models of vintage synths that you'll find. And this is my all-time favourite synth. This is the synth that does that iconic line in Jump by Van Halen. That boom, boom, bam, bam, but also does some more iconic lines like Subdivisions by Rush, which I'm a massive Rush fan. That sound is an OB-X or an OB-Xa. I don't remember which one, but they're very similar. And it's a big, fat, growly kind of analog synth, and it was one of the iconic early 80s sounds. And it always confused me as to why Arturia had done a newer Oberheim synth, the Matrix 12, but had never done the OB-X, which has this big, punchy, lush, fat sound. And today they announced it, and we're like, oh, by the way, Clang, this is out. So, separately, it's €149 for this. So,
wow.
If you have the V collection though, which is all the other vintage synths they do, it's a €49 upgrade. Which means I would imagine when V Collection 8 eventually comes up, and I'm sure it will, then the OB-Xa will be included in that. Because that seems to be how they work. Their business model is new plugins come out, you can buy them separately, there's a small upgrade price, but then when the collection gets updated to the next version, everything gets rolled in.
That's fair.
One of the Davids in chat, David Imrie, hello. I see you imagining things, or did Behringer announce this one? They did, apparently. They've called theirs the UB-Xa, which is U for Yuli Behringer. UB, yeah. So, but the Behringer one is an actual hardware one, where this is a software version of the synth. Apparently, they've done
the one from last week?
Might be. Unfortunately, and I know this is going to disappoint some of our viewers, but I tried really hard to find something, and there's a distinct lack of Behringer Corner this week, guys.
Boo.
Boo, I know. Boo. I tried.
Boo,
I looked and looked and looked. Boo this man. And one of my favourite things about the Oberheim synth that's a lot of other synths didn't do is you could, I think it had 6 voices in one of these by default. And if you pressed a note, you could set it so it would play them all at once with the unison button. And they were all slightly out of tune with each other, so it'd give you this massive sound. And if you open the back up and used a screwdriver and really tweaked it, you could get them to come out in stereo, and it would sound huge. huge, which is where that big Van Halen thing comes from that just fills the speakers. To save you having to screw around with that, Arturia have added a couple of knobs. A button that's stereo and a knob that is spread. So the spread knob, and I've seen this in other software versions of the OB-X, which were kind of pay limitations, but we're trying to get there, is as you turn the spread up, it will make it more and more and more stereo. So if you just whack that knob up and hit a big note, you'll just be like, and fill the stereo space. And I'm quite sure I'm going to get this plugin by hook or by crook. And when I get into the studio with my subwoofers, get a big bass note going and just play it. And I'm just going to stand there for about 5 minutes going, just like, yeah, just bathe in the big stereo synthiness of it all. Probably not end up making a song with it, at least not separately, but I'll just stand there and just like, yes. Yeah. But you can get some really, really nice sounds out of this, so I'm really looking forward to trying that. Probably over the next couple of weeks, I'll be making a video on the Arturia V Collection 7 as it is, so then I'll probably follow that up with a video specifically about this. So I'm, excited. So from synth to something that's far more normal, but small. So this is the new, it's described in the headline as the perfect couch guitar. This is the PRS SE toner parlor guitar. So I don't know if you know much about parlor guitars.
No, nothing.
Right, so parlor guitars are small, usually. If you look at the kind of the body shape on this parlor guitar here, it's quite small. It very much sits on your lap. It's not like one of these big jumbo acoustics where you've got to have your elbow up in the sky to get over it. They're designed to be quite small. They sound quite boxy, but they also just have a certain charm to the sound that's very direct, very kind of, they almost kind of bark at you. And I really like the kind of sound that you get out of a parlor guitar. I find that in some mixes it can really be the thing you want. Unlike modern cheesy pop, this probably isn't going to do the thing. But if you're making something that's quite folky, this can really do the trick in sitting in the mix inside the sound of another big guitar, actually. Almost kind of sits in its own tonal space. And PRS do make great guitars. There's an electroacoustic version of this, which comes with a Fishman pickup system. And there's a non-electro version as well. The electro version's £520, and the regular one is £413. It's a very oddly specific number.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah, but that's from Thomann, so that's probably converted from their price in euros.
Right,
so
okay.
I'm going to guess that that's €450 or 579 euros for the electric version, somewhere around there because of the exchange rate. But there is a demo on the PRS YouTube channel that if you're interested in that, go and check that out. It's the P20 model.
Definitely do.
Yes. Sounds like the kind of thing I'd be very interested in making a video about. Probably not happening, but hey, a man can try. So, here's a plugin that I've been meaning to get for a while and might still end up with. FabFilter makes some very good plugins, and Saturn has been their multi-band distortion plugin. This was one that I saw Nolly Getgood using the original Saturn on a bass. What he did is he really distorted the mids on the bass because it's multi-band, and didn't do any distortion really on the other parts of the channel, which was very clever because it then gave it this big kind of grinding distortion sound, but still all the clarity was there on the low end. Now Saturn 2 is out, so there's a big update. And so there's a new GUI, which apparently is easier to read, new distortion and amp styles. There are ways to visualize the way that the distortion works now, which means it's a lot more easy to use, I would say.
How do you visualize distortion?
That's a good question. But distortion can involve like transients and yeah, you can see what's going into a distortion in terms of harmonics and
I mean, that was a genuine question. How can
yeah.
can you tell a clean guitar from a distorted guitar by the waveform, and what's the difference?
Good question. Some people will say no.
I have a few.
A heavily distorted guitar you can usually see very easily because heavy distortion basically becomes saturation, and if you look at a zoomed out waveform, a clean guitar has these nice big spikes in it where distortion tends to look more like a big block. Generally because as you try and get louder, that's when things start to go wrong, quote unquote, and become distorted, which then ends up kind of flattening things out overall. But if you zoom in on a waveform that's more distorted, usually you'll see tiny little spikes on the waveform as it goes, because there's a lot higher. There's a lot more frequency in distorted guitars, a lot more high frequencies, because what distortion is, really, when we get down to it, is added higher harmonics. And so that can be a little bit, which is where you get kind of vintage mixing desk distortion, where it's this really where it's this really subtle thing, or it can be absolutely mashed to hell, and anywhere in between. And you can actually see, if you get an oscillator, a oscilloscope, and you start to distort a wave, you can usually see little kind of spikes start to come in as the harmonics come in, and you can see the fundamentals start to flatten down quite often. That depends on what circuit it is that you're doing, so it is quite hard to see. But I think what I was trying to describe in terms of Saturn is it's got these nice coloured images where it can change transients and different distortion shapes, where it's got pretty little pictures for them, which I think will just help you to visualize what kind of distortion you're hearing, which is only going to be a good thing in terms of your understanding of what it is that you're actually going for. Marty in chat asks, does this also do the subtle power transformer thingy? Marty, yes, it does. I've tried Saturn, and you can be very gentle with it. If you use it on the different sections in the different bands very gently, you can get a very gentle saturation effect rather than an all-out fuzz, and you can get that really distinct grind and anything in between. There are loads of different models. In fact, one of the models that you see in the picture here is called warm tape. Tape, generally, unless you really push it, doesn't distort very much, but it does add saturated harmonics at different places. And unless you really, really push it, of course, and then it will start to saturate overly and clip, which can be good or bad, personal preference. So, yeah, there's everything from subtle saturation to absolute chaos in Saturn, which is why I've been thinking about getting it, but then I've just ended up getting sounds that I want through other methods. But it's a one-stop shop, Saturn, and now Saturn 2. So yeah, it's worth checking out, especially if you're a fan of FabFilter's methods to begin with. The only thing that puts me off it, actually, I don't know exactly for this one, but generally with FabFilter stuff, the thing that puts me off it is the prices. Because they are known for not being cheap. Which, that's not everything, of course. But like their EQ, the Pro Q2, it's a very sophisticated EQ, but at €200, $200 I think it was, that's a lot of money for an EQ. And
that is.
Yeah. So yeah. That's kind of the pricing for Saturn, I think, was 150 or 180 originally, so they've not confirmed the price for Saturn 2, but it's likely to be in that range.
Okay.
So, JHS Pedals have released their Legends of Fuzz series. I saw the video as this came out. I do follow the JHS Pedals channel, and quite often I watch their videos while I'm doing things like washing the dishes.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's only so much time in the day that I've got to watch YouTube videos. But I'll get the iPad out, put that to the side while I'm doing things like cleaning the kitchen after the mucky little child. And so I think it's Thursday or Friday, watch the JHS stuff, which is great. And come on, brain. Josh Scott from JHS does make really good pedals, and these are interesting to me. These are not particularly cheap, but compared to a lot of hand-built pedals, they're relatively affordable. These are all $179 for what these are, which is a little on the expensive side, but for something that's hand-built, I don't think it's ridiculous. And these 4 pedals, the reason they made them is these are based exactly, like tone circuit exact, based on 4 iconic fuzz pedals. So the first one is the tone bender, which the tone bender was that original early 70s fuzz sound that a lot of Rolling Stones, all that kind of stuff, that was all tone benders. Then the next one is the one of the original Electro Harmonics, Big Muff fuzzes, which they've done. Which you can't get the ones from that era for anything less than a silly amount of money or in absolutely battered condition. Then there's the Smiley, which is the fuzz face, the Arbiter fuzz face, which was this big smiley face, which was the Jimi Hendrix pedal. So a lot of Hendrix's big guitar sounds were because of one of these pedals. But again, they're getting the components right and everything for something that sounds exactly like that 1969 fuzz face. Very hard to do these days, and somehow they've managed to do that. And the last one that I'm quite excited for, and eventually might hope to get one of these, is based on the Japanese Univox Super Fuzz. The Univox Super Fuzz is a massive, thick, dirty fuzz sound. Think the Benz era Radiohead. That big sound that I really like that guitar tone. It's thick in the mids, but it's still clear. It doesn't necessarily sound ratty. But yeah, they've decided they're making an entire range of these pedals, and they're not limited edition, they're not one-offs, so it's going to be very interesting to see how these do. Apparently they've absolutely flown out the doors, which I'm not surprised on. They've made them look very basic, which means they can make them to a slightly lower price point, I would imagine. And they're not spending extra money trying to recreate the look of the old pedals, they're just the sound of them, which I think is the right way to go, because on record, you don't hear how the pedal looks. And there's, on each one of these, there's a little red button, which you can only just see there. And that's the mode button. And what they've done, I was seeing Mr. Scott say on a live stream yesterday, is these change the circuit. So the circuit without the mode button is pretty much the original fuzz circuit as it was designed, but then you press the button in and it's Josh Scott saying, well, this is how I would have done it, this is how I would improve on the sound that they had based on what modern performers probably want. Which is very clever, I think, because then you've got the option of either. So you've got the spirit of the original fuzz pedals, but then if you want something that's a little beefed up, you click in a button. But if you decide, no, I actually want the authenticity, just unclick the button. Very clever.
So here's my question.
Go on.
These vintage pedals
that
were made a long time ago in the grand scheme of things now.
Yes.
Do they actually sound good, or do we just think they sound good because of what the era and the type of music we attribute to them?
Porque no los dos. Why not both?
Enough.
Yeah, I'm sure there is going to be some nostalgia involved, but to a point, I think some of these circuits do have identifiable sounds that, in the right context, can really, really sound right for certain songs. Some of these, I think it's either the tone bender or the smiley. I can't remember, but if you have that on all the time, you can actually back your guitar volume off, and you get a really nice clean tone. So then they're the kind of pedal where you can use it, and then you can use your volume to get some searing, fuzzy sounds, and then just back that off as well. So some of these are quite versatile. But yeah, part of it is probably just because some of these are insanely difficult to get as well. And a lot of pedal companies, I think, have tried to make pedals that sound quite like the originals. And either have missed the mark, or to get them to sound exactly like the originals have had to go to great lengths and therefore end up with great cost. And so, I mean, with pedals, I've always noticed that, like, let's say they sell 1,000 of each, just as a ballpark number. It might be way more than that, I don't know, but let's just say they sell 1,000 of each. 700 of each are probably going to be sold second hand within 3 or 6 months, but someone else will buy them, and then they'll decide it's not for them, and then somebody else will buy them. There's a lot of kind of trading goes on in pedals, where people are constantly tone chasing, and they're like, I thought that I would like this one, but actually it turns out I like this one. There is a lot of that. So, yeah, and yes, Marty in chat does say that most of the originals of these are going for $2,000+ because there weren't that many of them made at the time. They were all probably handmade in some factory somewhere that no longer exists, with components that no longer exist because the manufacturers of the parts stopped 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, how we get aligned with tones from certain eras. So I think, like, because there's lots of amazing, especially like independent as well, like pedal makers today, coming up with their own pedals using analog methods and such. Yeah. They're just interesting. Whether be good to do like a really unbiased shoot off of classic pedals versus modern equivalents that are not necessarily copies, but like doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And see whether. But then even so, there's still a subconscious element of, if you hear a certain sound and it reminds you of, say, Hendrix, your mind might automatically go to, that's a good tone. Do you know what I mean? It's interesting.
And I suppose that the next part there is, what are people trying to achieve? Because, like, if you're in, a Hendrix cover band, only the best will do.
Yeah,
but
of course, yeah.
If you were brought up with, like, Hendrix is my god, then you'll probably be much more likely to choose that sound as your favourite. Whereas if you have no tonal reference, which one would you pick? It's a very difficult question to answer, I guess. But like, there are modern equivalents that have sold very well and are very successful. A very good example would be the fuzzes that Z-Vex make, Zachary Vex, which Matt Bellamy from Muse is a massive fan of. That's a fuzz pedal that has a completely different sound from any of these, but has gone on to sell incredibly well. If you think of fuzzy Muse sounds, they're all that pedal, basically. I can't remember which one it is. It's either the Z-Vex Box of Rock, or I can't remember the name of the exact one that Matt Bellamy likes. Fuzz Factory. There we go, the Z-Vex Fuzz Factory. But yeah, that's got a design that's completely unlike any of these. And if you turn the knobs the wrong way on a Fuzz Factory, it can become an absolute squealing mess, which, if you've seen Muse live, they quite often do that, and like will put the guitars down, the guitar's going, sounding like a dying animal. That's that. But yeah, I mean, that's a very good point from Musera in chat. If there wasn't a certain amount of errors / randomness, it would be easy to replicate digitally. Which, yeah, fuzz pedals in particular, out of all the pedal types there are, fuzz pedals do seem to be the most difficult to accurately replicate because they do some very strange things when connected to a guitar. To the point where the same fuzz pedal, if you plug your guitar straight into it, or if you put that pedal behind a few other pedals in a row on a pedal board, it can sound completely different, even if the other pedals aren't on.
All right.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things. The fuzz pedals in particular react very organically with the pickups in a guitar. And so there's a very difficult thing to replicate there, which is fascinating. And I didn't know that for years. And me and my dad have both been pedal collectors at different times. And he would have got fuzz pedals. I remember getting a Joe Bonamassa fuzz face. And I think we both, without realising it, had a tuner, because you always plug into your tuner first, then into the fuzz, and neither of us liked it. We always thought it sounded thin and harsh and shrill. And anyone who's a fuzz fanatic will tell you, oh, that's not how you do that. You're supposed to have your fuzz before anything, because of this relationship that they have. And they sound completely different. So yeah, you learn new things every day. Every day is a school day.
You do.
But yeah, they're on sale now if you can get one. But like I said, they're not limited edition. They are intending to make more even if they sell out, which is cool. And yeah, I'll be keeping an eye out, see if I can get one second hand. So, moving on from one pedal maker to another. This one made me laugh. J-Rocket Audio Designs have made a pedal that's ridiculous. It's called the Brover Drive. And it's got loads of silly names on it, like Professor and Brohemian and Brotato Chip. It's basically got bro everything on the front. I don't know why. That's really stupid. But it's got Lev Bro, Bro Gain, and Bro Tone. So
We played Broforce.
I have played Broforce. I played Broforce with you.
Yeah.
I've got a Broforce t-shirt somewhere.
Yeah.
Bro.
This is the pedal, the Broforce pedal.
Absolutely. Max it out for Broforce.
The Broforce have pedals.
So yeah, this is $199.
So what does it do?
I don't know.
Overdrive pedal.
It's
Just another overdrive? Question mark.
Pretty much. That's what everything says. What does it do? Don't know, bro.
Well, it says at the bottom another overdrive question mark.
Professor Protein Shake. There's an official demo video. Apparently, it's got a musical sound, but it's an overdrive pedal basically. But it's got bro.
So what's the difference between an overdrive pedal, a distortion pedal, and a fuzz pedal?
Oh, this can. Oh, you've asked the question. Oh, there are blurred lines in between them, but the general wisdom is that an overdrive pedal is trying to push the front of a guitar amp so the amp becomes overloaded and does a thing. A distortion pedal does more clipping and distortion inside the pedal itself so that the pedal is the source of that sound. And a fuzz is a completely different beast where it's to do with transistors and things that are kind of breaking up and not behaving properly, and it ends up sounding fuzzy. There's more to it, and guys like That Pedal Show, Dan and Mick from That Pedal Show have done videos that go on for hours about this topic. That's their specialty. That's what they do. So very much, if you in viewing this are asking the same question and my answer isn't satisfactory enough, go and watch their videos on the subject.
I mean, that makes sense to me. So
yeah, that's the very, very basic breakdown. As you dive more and more into it, yeah, you'll probably find that there is more to it, but hopefully that is a short enough explanation. It's not one of those questions that the answer is as simple as I'd like. I've had overdrives that distort. I've had distortions that cause the amp to go into overdrive. I've Big muff pedals are somewhere between distortion and fuzz. Rat pedals are somewhere in between overdrive and distortion and fuzz and everything all in between. So it can get difficult. Yeah. And so, yeah, I just found this really funny because, the JHS pedal is very classy, very plain, trying to be vintage, and then J-Rocket, bro! That was a stark contrast that made me laugh. Let's see. Plug-in Alliance. So back to software. Plug-in Alliance make lots of very nice software, and they are making an EQ based on the AMEC EQ200, based on the GML 8200, which, if you've seen rack EQs in big studios, they've got this like red, orange, green, and blue kind of colouring on them. That's a GML, which is a very clean sounding EQ that a lot of people like. Doesn't distort much, very, very clean indeed. And yeah, it's got a mid-side mode, so you can make mixes wider. Oh, David Imrie, you have a King of Tone. Nice. The King of Tone pedal is talked about as like hallowed ground because there's now, I think it's a 3 or 4 year waiting list. You put your name on the waiting list, and then, well, if they get round to you, great. Yeah. But yeah, there's an additional saturation button and some clever stuff on this AMEC EQ. Ooh. It's $350 though. That's the introductory price. Better be good for that money.
Introductory price.
Yeah, then it's going to be $399. Gee whiz, it better be a good EQ for that price. Especially considering what you can get these days. Oh boy. That's a lot. So, what else have we got? Toontrack have now made Easy Bass. They're attempting to replace me. They will never replace me. The real bass players will live on forever. Yes, Andrea Scapoli in chat says that EQ, the real thing, is only $6,165 in Sweetwater. So yeah, get the hardware one. Value. Yes. But yeah, Easy Bass, it's not just a sampler, which is what makes it interesting. What you can do is there's an audio to MIDI audio tracker inside it. So if you've got a bass line that you've been sent that is, the notes are right but it sounds awful, you can actually feed that into Easy Bass. It will work out what the notes are, and it will then play it back through a good sounding bass.
Will it work with Primus?
Who knows? It might just come up with a big question mark. Or just, this is Primus. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's got a really modern alembic bass and a vintage Fender Jazz, which is cool. Apparently they've got exceptional levels of detail, and that's £129, €149. If you can't play bass, then this is probably a thing for you. Or if you're a mix engineer and people are sending you terrible bass parts, that, when you've got that bass player where you're like, I told you to change the strings and they didn't, and it sounds like a mushy mess, which is far too common, you could feed it into Easy Bass and it will literally play the bass for you. Well, it was very clever. And last but not least, iZotope, who make Ozone. I found this week because I updated my copy of Ozone 9, and there's now a thing called Tonal Balance Control 2, where it shows you tonal balance control. It shows you exactly how your track should be, and whether you've got too much bass, not enough low mids, that kind of thing. But you can drop this on anywhere, and if you've got Neutron and Ozone running on a project, then it can pick up the audio from like your drum group, your bass group, your guitar group, and it can analyze them all separately, and it can tell you things like, hey, your guitars have probably got too much mids in, or your bass has got too much treble, or any number of things, because you can tell it what genre you're working in as well, so that it's got an idea of what you're aiming for, because of course different genres do have quite different tonal palettes. If I was to, this is where like when I do mastering videos, it's always really interesting the questions people ask me, because if I was doing mastering on a rock album versus like say an EDM album, my requirements would be very different. For EDM, you probably want super low bass and that kind of thing, whereas in rock you generally don't. You probably want quite a bit of low mids on guitars, that kind of thing, whereas in EDM, you generally, that whole frequency range is, not really there, because you're leaving room for the snare to go and that kind of thing. Just two wildly varying examples that are worth mentioning because they're so different from each other. And so this has now been included if you have the latest versions of Ozone and Neutron, which I thought was very interesting. There's a coarse mode and a fine mode, so you can see really detailed it gives you... If you've ever seen me working with sonar work, so it's got these kind of frequency ranges, it's kind of the opposite of that, where it's... the coarse mode has got these bars where it's like, you should have more bass, less bass. But in fine mode, it's got an entire like frequency line with a kind of an upper and lower around that of kind of acceptable levels. And you can see very detailed frequency laid on top of that. So you can see whether an area is distinctly lacking or whether there's a horrible ringing overall that shouldn't be there, that kind of thing. So if you're monitoring as well, if your monitoring situation isn't perfect, it will visually give you a cue of where you're going wrong. So possibly the best thing to do there is trust it. Do what it says, pull up or down the EQ in those sections, render it and go and listen in the car and then go, it was right. Yeah. Because it can hear better than you can hear. It might not make the right decisions based on what you want. That's a very human element, of course, but it can display things for you in such a way. Yes, our mod. Everybody help Marty out. He's really, really trying to hold himself back from hitting that like button. So if everybody could hit like for him, that would really help Marty out.
We need to help him. Help Marty.
Everybody help by hitting that like button, and then suddenly he can rest.
Help him.
Marty!
So yeah, that was the news.
Are we not moving though into the world of like AI mastering now though?
Yes, but like I said, there is very much a human element, I think, still, where if you got rock should sound like this, click. Then everything starts to sound generic. But then if you've been given a mix where, I don't know, the guitars on that mix are intended to like not have a certain amount of low mid or high mid, or the vocals are supposed to be really dark or really bright or whatever. If you're a human and you've got the mix notes in front of you to say this is intentional, you can roll with it. Where if you're automated service, you're not going to know that, and you're going to end up giving some horribly skewed tone that ends up being nothing like what was intended. If you want to sound like everybody else and your mix sounds like everybody else, then yeah, just shove it on an online mastering service. But that's only going to get you so far if there's anything even slightly out of the ordinary, which most songs with any kind of creativity have something unusual in them. That's creativity. Unless your aim of creativity on that day is to make the most cookie-cutter thing you can possibly make, which has been done. Yeah,
and you can do to make money. So
yeah.
It's okay to make money.
Absolutely. It's okay to be Nickelback.
Or Jimmy Eat World. They made their sound more commercial so that they could sell records.
Yeah.
For a period of time. And everyone loves that album. It's a great album. But it wasn't their sound.
Interesting. Last night I did this mastering stream, And just before going live, I went on hdtracks.com, which is where you can get the really high quality like wave files for modern albums. And it's pop punk, so I bought the latest Blink album, 9, which is kind of cool. I kind of like it. But
I've listened to it to death.
Yeah?
I think I'm on literally, if you like, Ash thinks it's the only thing I listen to because how much he's heard me listen to it. Yeah, I think it's a really good album.
Is it not?
Yeah, probably. She's probably right.
Yeah. But so I got that, and then thought, I'd best do a quick check, because you can still at the moment check YouTube's music copyright before that goes away, which is a really annoying thing. That's going away when they get rid of the classic mode, which is awful. But I checked one of the Blink songs, and it was like, blocked in 246 countries. Crap. So that's why eventually my reference source was Chelsea by Dragged Under, which is the one that's being done on the mix competition with Pro Mix Academy and Produce Like a Pro at the moment. Because that's also kind of pop punkish, but I knew that my channel wouldn't get a video blocked, which is hell. So I had to listen to that song again. It's not a bad song, but when you've listened to any song 400 or 500 times, you're like, I'm done now. Unless apparently, according to Liam, it's the new Blink album. So let's take some questions from the floor, ladies and gentlemen. If there's anything you'd like to ask us in chat, now is the time. Now is our little technical section of the podcast. Ooh, that was nice. And while you all get your questions in, we've just been prompted by Marty in chat that if you want to do better than Nickelback, then maybe you should be on promixacademy.com and check out our ultimate guide to using Reaper, so you can use that to your full advantage to not sound like Nickelback, or sound like Nickelback if you so desire, because that can be a good thing in a parallel universe.
Click on the link and show them what they look like.
Yes. Question. Do any DAWs allow you to record video in real time? I want to record myself writing a song jam, and the prospect of trying to edit and sing 50 takes in post is not fun. No, but, and there's always a but, you can use OBS Studio. OBS Studio is free. We're using it right now to do this stream. And what you could do, what I've done quite a few times on mix streams, is you can route the sound from your DAW, we use Reaper, into OBS and have the camera in OBS at the same time. So then it's all synced up so that everything goes through. And then instead of streaming it somewhere, you can just hit record, and that will record at your preferred bitrate. And that way you've got the video ready synced, ready to go. So that is definitely an option. Or
you could record the audio as one continuous file. Make sure there is at least some form of audio recording on your camera. It doesn't have to be good quality. And get pluralized by Red Giant, I think it is.
Yeah.
And that will sync it all for you. So all you need to do is just load in the audio, load in all the video, hit sync, wait 10-15 minutes, and it'll give you an EDL or an output for Final Cut, Premiere, whatever you're using to edit, with everything nicely lined up and all synced in, and you just edit away. That's what we use for doing multi-camera stuff when we need to do that. It's really good. It works perfectly.
Yeah, that's one way of doing it. Yeah.
Depends on where you are and how easy it is to do the things you're doing. If you record them on your phone, it's not possible really to do it into OBS or something, then you could just record all the clips on your phone and do that. It's an option.
Trying to think. Because if you mean like editing the video clips to match a video, that's a whole different thing, and that could be difficult. But that does just take a lot of effort, unfortunately, if you're doing things that way. the way that I tend to do things most of the time is record the audio only until I'm happy with the takes, then play along to that with the video rolling, because then I know that the takes are right. That's the other way of doing it if you're going for an edited performance. So what else have we got? What are my thoughts on copyrights? Not touching that with a 10-foot barge pole tonight, because I don't think we've got enough time on stream for that. I'm sure we've talked about copyright before on the stream. We must have.
Probably.
Yeah, but it's such a broad topic as well, copyright, that...
Oh, but on that,
on.
somewhere on the internet, you'll find the guy that's recorded everything that could ever need to be recorded or whatever it was in MIDI.
Yes.
You buy the license to that.
Every melody ever, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're pushing to make every melodic hook open, not open source, what's the word? Like, common, there's a word for it.
What, Creative Commons license?
Yeah, Creative Commons, thank you. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like, copyright's complicated. Yes, there's only so many sounds in the universe, but when you copyright something, it is about putting things into a process. So like within business, for instance, you can copyright a process of doing something. So that way of doing it is then copyrighted because you're the first person to do that. So theoretically in music, you can copyright if you have made a song a certain way, so taking all the bits together, which does then, when you get into the element of, okay, what about sampling part of a record and all that, then yeah, there's debate there, and I can see part of the argument at that point. So yeah, it is an interesting one, but one we don't have time for.
So, question from Nick: can you explain dithering? Sorry, in mastering using FGX. So dithering is
what you can't decide what to do.
Yes, beat me to it. It's what English people do when they can't quite get on with their work. But from a technical angle, so dithering is kind of it's an odd thing where, because digital audio only has a certain volume between maximum volume and nothing. I might sneeze, so I might have to... No, I'm good. Yeah, so because there's only a certain range between maximum and nothing, if you get really close to that nothing, it starts to sound pretty bad, because you basically go from nothing to having a little bit of something, so it kind of goes and sounds terrible and kind of crackles. So what dithering does, dithering is a very clever little scientific thing that there have been technical papers written about. And what it does is it adds a tiny little bit of noise right at the lowest possible volumes that gives you the impression that you can actually have like quieter audio than you actually have, and so the quieter bits are actually kind of cleaner. It's weird how it works. On paper it shouldn't work, but it does, and it was more important, I would say more important. It's always important to do that at the right places as an audio producer. It's not something that a layman has to worry about, but especially in the 16-bit era. 16-bit audio, the last time we really saw 16-bit audio was CDs. There will be exceptions that people are going to talk about in chat and go, oh, there's this, there's that, but yeah, 16-bit WAV files are what CDs are made out of, and there's only a certain volume that they're capable of, and right near the bottom, you could, if it was something like, I don't know, a classical album where there were some really quiet bits, it could get really quite odd, so dithering kind of fixed that. On rock stuff, where everything is right near maximum volume, it's arguably less of an issue, and so, yeah. It's a weird kind of thing where adding a little bit of noise in the right time and in the right way actually makes things sound cleaner. Weird. So let's have a look. Question. Here's a good one. So, Andrea just bought the course on Pro Mix Academy. Thank you very much. Curious. So the OSC feature, so remote control with OSC, which is open sound control. Can I have more than one mixer fader on a tablet screen? Yes. So I use an app called Touch OSC for that, and if I'm using it on my phone, there's only enough space on my phone screen for one fader. So if I just pull up Touch OSC here, this is a layout called Logic Touch. So I can actually control Reaper with one big fader there for the volume, and I can flick between tracks, which is cool. But on iPads and Android, there's a layout called Logic Pad, like iPad, and that's got 8 faders on each bank, and you can flick between banks of 8. And it tells you at the top what tracks they are as well. So, yeah, it's you can do lots and lots and lots of channels. There was a video on our channel, if you want to do a quick googly after the podcast, where we did a little stream where I used 5 iPads with my studio set up for a little while. It was ridiculous. It was overkill. It was beautiful. And that means that we had 40 channels of faders for doing everything right in front of me. It was total overkill, and it was brilliant, and I'll never do it again.
It looked really cool.
It did.
Yeah, but you never used it.
No, the way that I tend to work, I'm so comfortable with mouse and keyboard, I generally didn't even lift my hands up to move the faders because that's just not generally the way my head has been trained to work. But it was cool. So, yeah.
I now have one of those iPads permanently chained to the side of my bed as my TV TV watching. I have a magic arm coming out the side of my bed with an iPad on it now.
Amazing.
Let's go somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's have a look. So we'll just answer one or two more and then call it. So what have we got? Ever use SoundForge? Nope. Can you get a driver for something? I don't know. That sounds like a technical question that's worth either looking on a forum or a Google, to be honest, because questions like that, like can you get a driver for a certain thing, I would just Google it myself. That's how, there will be answers, there will be forums where people have, if it doesn't officially exist, generally stuff like that unofficially exists, and there's somebody out there who's made stuff like that. So, yeah, get searching. You'll very quickly find a forum, usually where somebody's done what you're looking for. And so I think, actually, that covers it.
I've got one. Can I use the instrument in on my Evo 4 to send audio from my laptop into my current computer?
Probably. I mean,
the line level in, so it should be fine, right?
Yeah. I mean, are you just using one input on it right now for the microphone?
Yeah, I just got the mic input in, yeah. I'm not using the XLR ends at the back. Oh, but yeah, microphone, yeah. Yeah, the microphone at the back, yeah. There's another mic empty.
Well, if you look closely at the mic on the back, it's probably a combo port that's got a jack hole in the middle of it.
Yeah, it is. So I've got it in 2. Yeah, so it's mic 1 and 2, and then the line is line 1. So I'm guessing that they share a channel?
So in the instrument input will share a channel with channel 1.
Yeah. So if I've got the mic in 2 like I do, I should be able to put my laptop into 1.
Yeah. Yeah. But you can probably plug your laptop into the back, into the line bit rather than the instrument bit. You'll get a better quality just doing it line.
Yeah, but that's an XLR input.
Has it not got a hole in the middle of the XLR though?
Oh shit! Is that for a cable?
Yeah, that's a combo port. That's a
hole.
Yeah, so those are relatively new. That's a combo port. So the middle of it is actually a jack hole, but you can also plug an
I
extra.
learned. Yes. Fuck me.
Yeah,
Fuck me. 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 I'd have expected to explode if I plugged something in that hole.
That's what she said. Oh, perfect timing there. Yeah, it seems like I've got a little audience sono down here, and actually I'll hold it up to the camera. If you look at the back of the sono, these two XLR ports have got a giant hole in the middle of them. That's a combo port. So those are actually line inputs in the middle of it. And
I never knew that.
yeah.
I mean, I've seen those for years. I never knew that.
Well, you've learned something now.
Yeah.
You're an audio guy now.
Wow.
Yeah. On the mixing stream that I did on Tuesday, I actually did something really ridiculous. I used the Arturia audio fuse as my main interface, but I also ended up using the sono live at the same time to reamp through my PV5150. Being a complete idiot, I managed to leave my reamp box at the studio. So I found that I could change it so that OBS had this mic going through the Arturia. I switched Reaper to use the Sono because it's got its own active reamp output, which I've not seen any other interfaces in this price range that do that. And I was running through the 5150 and then through the Captor. And so, yeah, that all went through reamped guitars for the stream. And somehow nothing exploded. It was brilliant. Yeah. Last question.
Cool.
In my younger years, have I ever produced mixed EDM songs? Not really. I mean, I've worked in a lot of genres. I've done a lot of stuff for TV and film. And I have done a bit of heavier stuff and electronic-y stuff, but EDM as we know it didn't really exist when I started learning and was doing a lot of stuff. By the time I found my specialty of working in rock and metal, that's when EDM started to really come out. And
well, isn't EDM an American term for music that started over here as kind of drum and bass and grime and stuff?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, like, EDM as we know it these days is Skrillex, Noisia, all that kind of really heavily compressed. Yeah. Some people call it, like, bro step. Because it kind of takes dubstep, but really puts aggressive synths on it, really limits the volume as loud as possible. I understand the methods involved. If someone sent me all the separate tracks of an EDM track that they'd recorded and wanted me to mix it, I'm sure I could. But that just happens to not be the field that I am known for. So, yeah. One little one. Do you get permission from the band if you mix an album live? Generally, yes. The APY album was a slightly different. That was an album that we had recorded with our record label years ago, so I just decided to do that as a bit of an educational bit of fun. And it turned into a project.
We have the rights to play that music and edit it and stuff. So
so that was a notable exception.
We have the rights for that anyway, so we don't have to ask.
But yeah,
even though we did, like we spoke to the band, like when it was happening, we were like, "Hey, come and join in." I don't know if you noticed, but on some of the streams, I think pretty much every member of the band, apart from Dave, managed to join at some point.
Yeah.
Oh no, not even Dave did. Yeah, all of them did. All of them.
Right.
Not all of them chatted though, but they're all keen to hear what it sounds like as well.
Yeah. Speaking of which, before we go, shall we play the ladies and gentlemen a song?
Sure.
Yeah, because for those people who haven't seen the stream that we did, we've done what I now call the trilogy of kind of mixing, final stages of mixing with automation and then mastering. That album is now done, and I'm really quite happy with it, and so I'm glad I did it. Do you want to pick a song out of the album to play for everybody?
Whatever you feel is good. To caveat this as well, this is an album that was recorded about 10 years ago when we very first started the studio on gear that we managed to beg, steal and borrow off eBay with a budget of literally 20 quid, what was ever in our pocket. A digital mixing desk that I had, an Edirol, which was awful, and a live room that was just a room above an estate agent's with duvets on the wall. So yeah, and then those files I done pull back out, some of which I had to get the drum takes from the backup files from Reaper on an archived hard drive, and he imported them into the project whilst mixing live. So Frankenstein of a project from 10 years ago, and Adam decided to remix it for fun on stream. So that's where this has come from. It wasn't recorded yesterday in the studio.
No, yes. There's a real story behind it, but it was really good fun to revisit it and remix it. Kind of
a lot of good memories.
Yeah. And so yeah, I listened back to it this morning, and hopefully this will play back through the stream. Let's find out.
I'll show you what rolls behind those eyes.
And that was another hot tip tune from A Poetic Yesterday. Pop-a-dop-a-doo-bop. Yes, I always did like that album. And it's someone in the chat was saying it reminded them very much that the new Tony Hawk's remaster is coming out, which I'm very excited about. I love that soundtrack.
Yeah.
Apparently, there are only 5 songs out of both soundtracks that they couldn't secure the rights for. So most of it is the original soundtrack, which is great. Nice. Really looking forward to that. But yeah, I have to agree that the guys from APY used to genuinely make skate videos while they were still young and doing the band kind of thing. What was the VHS series they made? Clean Sewage?
Clean Sewage.
Yeah.
It went viral in Birmingham via VHS tape. Before the internet was a thing, like literally pretty much everyone within their sort of 5-10 year age group in Birmingham had the VHS passed around at some point. So they were known in Birmingham as the Clean Sewage guys, kind of like Jackass sort of style of how you could go viral back then, with literally people lending a VHS tape to each other. It's hilarious. Still got a load of the tapes up in the attic, actually.
Yeah. How times change. But yeah, that was them. And so, yeah, it made a lot of sense. And that big, massive harmony vocal thing at the end where it all got stacked on top of each other, that was our idea because we were all big fans of Blink and the new...
Yeah, Brand New, Taking Back Sunday, that sort of thing. That was...
Yeah, we were all really jamming on Brand New. But specifically for me, the end of Blink-182's Untitled album had not long been out at that point, only a few years. What's this? They fell short this time, smiles. What's that song called? You'll know exactly which one I mean.
Yeah, I know which one you mean. It's the first, isn't it? The first one on the album.
I think it might be. And Feeling This. And when at the end of Feeling This, it does that where all those vocal lines start to layer on top of each other, and I just was like, we've got to do that with this song because that was the song that it just fit. And so yeah, a lot of production tricks do end up happening in the studio where you go, right, we've got to do this. So yeah, I think that's probably a good place to end it. A couple of people were asking on stream yesterday whether there's going to be anywhere for this mix to be available. So I think we should talk to the APY boys, see what we can come up with, if anything. See if there's some possibility.
Yeah.
And you never know. If anything happens with it, no promises, but we'll let you know. We'll put some links in the YouTube and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see what we can do. So I think
Indeed.
that is a good place to call it for today. And I will be back with you probably on Sunday for another live stream. In the meantime, lots and lots of things to do. I'm actually having a day off tomorrow because I am a little tired. Now done live streams 3 nights on the bounce. So, yes. Time for a little family time. And then on Saturday, I've got, things I can't talk about happening in the studio, which is always good. So,
good stuff.
As always, we'll see you...
Right.
Regardless of anything, we'll see you for the podcast, 8 p.m. UK time next Thursday. And join us after this stream in the Discord, and we will carry on this conversation after the podcast is done. If you want to hear the podcasts and you aren't a fan of the video for whatever reason, this is on iTunes and Spotify. So I will be putting this up on those services after the stream. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you in the next video. This has been the Hot Pole Position. Good night.
Bye-bye.